Number 10. Gorgon. If you remember the weirdest DC Multiverse superheroes video, which you should check out, I talked about a pastiche of the Incredible Hulk in DC Comics called Big Baby from Earth 8. He was part of a team called the Retaliators, who were supposed to be a joke version of the Avengers. This universe also had a team of villains called the Extremists, and on that team was a Dr. Octopus type character named Gorgon. While Gorgon did utilize technological enhancements, I think his octopus likeness comes in the form of his prehensile hair. The hair tentacles he uses and his role as a scientist mixed with his weight and oddly familiar glasses all come together to really evoke a Dr. Octopus likeness, which is just weird enough to make me double take. He is also familiar enough that I can't really put him any higher on this list, so there's that. Number 9. Dex Star. Or Dexstar, or Dexter, or Dexstar, Dexstarer. Cats can be ruthless, cold, and scary at times, I'll admit that. But while the Red Lantern of Sector 2814, Dexstar, is an irrationally rage-filled kitty, it's all because he loved his owner. Dexstar's origin shows the cat Dexter with his owner when she is attacked by robbers who broke into her home. While Dexter tried his best to scratch the attacker, he ended up ending the life of Dexter's owner. When the police showed up on the scene, Dexter was kicked out into the streets so as to not contaminate the scene. Now, two rascals from the streets found Dexter when he was trying to sleep, put him in a sack, and threw him into a river. Now that is one hell of a sequence of events, and all this happening filled the poor little kitty with enough rage that it caught the attention of Atrocitus, who called out to him and made him a Red Lantern. With this newfound power of the Red Lantern ring, the Rage Kitty exacted his sweet revenge on the hoodlums and flew to say goodbye to his owner one last time, saying, in his little cat language, "I find who hurt you, I kill. I, good kitty." I love this cat, but I also wouldn't dare mess with it. Ever. Number 8. Prometheus. Heroes and villains with no powers always seem to be some of the most powerful. It's strange. Take Prometheus. After seeing his criminal parents pass at the hands of police, he vows a vendetta on any form of justice. A vendetta that would push him to be able to defeat the whole Justice League single-handedly. He shot the Martian Manhunter with a dart that turned his power against him and set him on fire. He infected Steel's armor with a computer virus which commanded the suit to damage the Watchtower. He hypnotized the Huntress into unconsciousness. He attacked Green Lantern with a neural chaff that rendered his ring useless. He trapped the Angel Zariel in limbo. He tricked the Flash into believing that he had planted motion-sensitive devices that would explode if the Flash used his powers. And he defeated Batman in hand-to-hand combat. That's probably the most nuts thing on this list. His origin is very similar to Batman's. After his parents were dispatched from the mortal plane, he would travel the globe training and becoming the ultimate combat machine. But he also attended the top universities, learning as much as he could. He eventually sets up a base in the Ghost Zone, and from here, he built an armor that could download information on any opponent's fighting style, kind of reminiscent of Taskmaster's ability. He is kind of crazy capable, and his vendetta on any kind of justice plus his Batman likeness just makes him kind of a little strange to me, but also terrifying.
Number 7. The Flash. This version of the Flash is actually Reverse Flash, aka Eobard Thawne. I know. In a Dark Multiverse reimagining of the event Flashpoint, Thawne ends up defeating Barry Allen when the lightning strike meant to give him back his powers instead kills him. Oh no. With Allen now dead, Thawne is free to take his place as the Flash and focus on making the world just how he thinks it should be, basically terrorizing anyone who would potentially act against him and his will. It's frightening to imagine a world where Reverse Flash wins and ends up getting to become his own version of a hero as a result. I feel like Thawne would not make a very good hero. Number 6. Dread Lantern. Dread Lantern is a tragic Dark Multiverse version of Alan Scott, who leaps out of the pages of Tales from the Dark Multiverse Crisis on Infinite Earths, one of the new tales to come at us near the end of last year, December 2020. In this story, our heroes face off against the villain known as Surtur, and end up only surviving because Alan Scott sacrifices himself to become the Herald of Surtur, the Dread Lantern. In doing so, his Earth is permitted to live, but at the cost of many other worlds that he must help Surtur to destroy. Dread Lantern's sacrifice is heartbreaking as his son, Todd Rice, aka Obsidian, mourns the loss of his father. So sad. Number 5. The Silenced. Batman is often a figure who evokes fear among villains. Fear in many ways is what gives him presence and gives him power, and a lot of the times it is that fear that he evokes that gives him an advantage. This version of Batman plays up the element of fear, turning it all the way up to 11. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse Batman Hush, we get to see Bruce Wayne become a heroic but still terrifying version of that Hush character. Here he is known as Batman the Silenced. This version of Bruce ends up being taken in by his friend Thomas Elliot's family following the untimely death of his own parents. Becoming increasingly unstable after witnessing their murder, he eventually is committed to an asylum, with Tommy taking over Wayne Enterprises eventually, and going on to become a corrupt senator. Later we discovered that Bruce was faking a worsening psychosis as part of a plot to take out all those really responsible for the death of his parents after uncovering the truth. Here he becomes one of the most fearful symbols of the Bat I have ever seen in the comics. If you want a good scary story, you should check out Batman the Silenced and this issue. It's awesome. And I really want to hear someone play the music that's in it, to be honest. It's so spooky music.
Number 3. Monsieur Mallah and the Brain. Monsieur Mallah is described in his wiki as a militant, super-intelligent French gorilla. The Brain, on the other hand, is described as a genius French scientist and master criminal who exists as a disembodied brain. So, those two descriptions are interesting enough on their own, but when I tell you the French militant gorilla and the disembodied brain are an item together, I think that just elevates the whole thing to a different level. Together, they are the primary leaders of the Brotherhood of Evil, who were villains to both the Doom Patrol and the Teen Titans. They both appeared in Doom Patrol 86 in 1964. Now, Brain was once a scientist who experimented on the gorilla who would become Mallah, which would increase Mallah's intelligence. An accident injured Ernst, and Mallah had to remove Ernst's brain and place it in a technological holding thingamajig to keep him alive and be able to communicate. The two are almost always together, with Mallah carrying around the brain. Hey, look, I don't judge. You find love where you find love, but as a concept for supervillains who lead a team of supervillains, you gotta admit it's pretty odd to say the least. Number 2. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Let me repeat that for all those in the back who may not have heard. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral, Man. I don't really have a problem with 2/3 of that. I just get really hung up on the vegetable part. Is that weird? Sven Larsson is the man who claims that title. And while it is a completely ridiculous one, it is actually pretty fitting. Sven fell victim to an experiment of his own making, which allows him to transform into any animal, vegetable, or mineral, either partially or fully, although he very obviously likes to do a bit of all three at the same time, which is an odd choice, but hey, I just work here. Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man first appeared in Doom Patrol 89 in August 1964, and he is an enemy to the team, which makes sense given their weirdness. But Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man here has a vendetta against the Doom Patrol's leader, the Chief, who he believed once stole an invention of his. An invention that, funnily enough, is the only way of stopping Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. But he didn't even do that, so I don't know. Look, it gets weirder and weirder, but I gotta move on. Before I do though, Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. Okay, sorry, I just wanted to get out of my system one more time. Number 1, Mr. Mind. I think anyone who hasn't heard of this villain before would be forgiven. When you think of the most fearsome villains, specifically the villains of Captain Marvel, otherwise known as Shazam, you may not first think about the 7-inch long sentient worm from Venus known as Mr. Mind. This diabolically evil mind-controlling worm, after the events of Infinite Crisis, would cocoon himself and then emerge as a massive monstrosity capable of manipulating reality, consuming universes, and traveling through time and space. He was described as eating years and events from this universe's history, altering the Earth with every flap of his wings. It took a combined effort from Booster Gold, Supernova, and Skeets to defeat Mr. Mind by trapping him inside Skeets' shell, which was fortified by the Suspendium. Then, Booster Gold threw Skeets through time with the help of Supernova to the day he was first discovered on Earth by Dr. Sivana, and then he is trapped in a time loop forever. So they didn't even actually end up ending him. They just trapped him. This all-powerful mind-controlling 7-inch long worm.
Number 9. Dawnbreaker. What happens when your will is a little too strong? Well, you get a lantern like Dawnbreaker. Dawnbreaker is a version of Bruce Wayne from the Dark Multiverse Earth of -32. His will was so strong that he was able to bend the rules of his ring and use it to actually kill his parents' murderer. He ended up using the darkness within himself to alter the ring, corrupting it. Another example too of how Batman's ambition as a character can twist him into something darker. Dawnbreaker, after turning away from the lanterns, eventually consumed his world with his darkness as he was approached by the Batman Who Laughs to join his and Barbados' cause. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder, if you love the Dark Multiverse like I love the Dark Multiverse, be sure to show that love by giving this video a thumbs up, and why not click that subscribe while you're down there. Number 8. Eradicator. If you thought a dark Superman was scary, well, prepare yourself for something equally terrifying, if not more terrifying. A darker version of Lois Lane. After Superman's death, it seemed as though there was only one final hope for him to return, but when the Eradicator claimed it had arrived too late, Lois decided to take on the power it carried for herself in order to continue Clark's mission as Superman. Lois, of course, ended up being twisted by her grief and became hell-bent on eradicating the world of all of its crime. Because of this, she became a brutal stand-in for the hero, going far beyond what Superman would have deemed just or right when it came to the punishment of transgressors. Eventually, Superman did end up returning, only to reveal how disappointed he was in the kind of hero that Lois had become. During her attempt to save Superman from Cyborg Superman, she ended up accidentally putting him in danger and actually killed him instead, this time seemingly for good.
Number 7. Earth 17 Superman. On Earth 17, superheroes are a product of government experiments. The Superman of this universe, Overman, was the first, with the other superheroes being spawns of his DNA. Now that may be weird, but that ain't the weird part. He also doesn't really seem like a villain yet, does he? Well, after contracting a disease, contracting a disease from another person, yes, like that kind of disease, he goes insane and destroys the Justice League and reduces his world to rubble. He then gets his filthy paws on a doomsday boom boom that he intends to use on Earth 17 and wipe it out. The Crisis on Infinite Earths destroyed this reality, just like DC tried to destroy such a naughty Superman story, even having different iterations of Overmans who were different, like an Overman who became allied with the Axis powers in World War II. But the internet never forgets DC Comics, and people like me exist to remind everyone of the things you published into this world. I am sorry, sort of. Thanks for the content. Number 6. Mr. Mxyzptlk. Look, I talked about Batmite when discussing heroes, and he wasn't even really a hero, so how can I not mention the first 5th dimensional imp in this video? Plus he's got a fun name. Mr. Mxyzptlk is a reality warping imp obsessed with Superman, who, just like his rival Batmite did with Batman, simply seeks to annoy the hell out of Superman and just prove he is smarter than him. Which is good, because he has a level of power that in other hands could cause the entire end of the multiverse. More on that later though. He can do almost anything imaginable if he wishes it. And his only weakness really is being convinced or tricked into saying his name backwards to send him back to the 5th dimension, which, if you're trying to say it correctly, is honestly a superpower in and of itself. Clitopazixum. I got it. Number 5. Emperor Joker. Mr. Mxyzptlk has an extreme level of power, like I said. Also, like I said, if this power fell into the wrong hands, it could be potentially reality ending. Now, what hands could be worse than the psychotic hands of Batman's arch nemesis, the Joker? Well, that's exactly who gets the power in the Emperor Joker storyline. Mr. Mix gets bored and wants to give Joker 1% of his power, just to see the tricks Joker is able to pull off. But instead, the Joker tricks Mr. Mxyzptlk into giving him 99.9% of his power instead. Joker uses this power to rewrite all of reality to become his sick, twisted dream world. He eats the whole population of China out of a Chinese food container box. He keeps everyone stuck in a time loop, including Batman, who he introduces to the afterlife over and over every day forever. Oh, and he also turned Flash into a slow-moving obese man. Superman, the Spectre, and Mr. Mxyzptlk, being the only ones who can remember the former world, tried to do something about this all-powerful Joker. But that's just the problem. He is all-powerful. He destroys all of reality, but he can't bring himself to destroy Batman fully. And because of this, he loses control of his power, allowing the Spectre and Mr. Mix to steal it back and fix all of reality. This story it's pretty nuts. Number 4. Condiment King. When the villainous Condiment King came on the scene, it was literally on the scene, as he appeared in the animated Batman TV show from 1992. One of the best, honestly. Condiment King was Buddy Stantler, a comedian who was brainwashed by the Joker into becoming a villain who wields condiment squirters and viciously horrible puns. I knew you'd catch up to me sooner or later. How I've relished this meeting. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. Diabolical stuff like that. The puns get even worse in the comics, with his real name becoming a pun on its own. Mitchell Mayo. He isn't taken seriously by anyone. His weapons don't actually project his condiments at a speed fast enough to do anyone harm, but they sure are inconvenient, leaving nasty stains in your superhero costume. On the other hand, he does potentially have the ability to be able to cause anaphylactic shock if he is battling someone with an allergy, right?
Number 3. Barbados. Barbados is definitely one of the most powerful characters we've seen in the Dark Multiverse, especially considering he's basically like the creator of it, or well, at least the maintainer of it. Barbados is also known as the Bat God and claimed to in fact be the bat that Bruce saw when he was a child, who inspired him to become the hero we know as Batman. This also kinda makes sense why so much of the Dark Multiverse seems to focus on Batman stories, considering the Barbados himself is kind of bat themed. Barbados was a rogue agent of the World Forger. He was his dragon who was tasked with destroying unstable universes and basically returning with their energy so that the World Forger could build something new. At some point, however, Barbados decided that he didn't want to destroy these worlds anymore, and thus the Dark Multiverse was born. Number 1. Perpetua. Despite the fact that Perpetua technically was duped by Batman Who Laughs, she is still basically a universal constant who is also credited with creating the multiverse, and for that reason, I kinda have to consider her more powerful, although in the end even she too was defeated, so not as constant as we all thought, I suppose. Perpetua, however, has the power to destroy entire realities and universes, and is the mother of some of the most powerful beings in the DC universe, including the Anti-Monitor, Over-Monitor, and World Forger. Number 10. Darkfather. Darkfather is the Dark Multiverse combination of Darkseid and Batman. He inherited the powers of Darkseid after defeating him, and became seemingly corrupted by them. He also gained knowledge of the anti-life equation and used it to torment the people of his Earth. His versions of parademons are altered to appear like a bunch of Robins. However, he gave up being the ruler of his own universe in order to join the horrific army of Dark Knights led by the Batman Who Laughs. Because I guess it's really fun to do. Can't blame him for that. Number 9. Earth 2 Aquaman. Or I guess Earth -2 Aquaman, cause Dark Multiverse? This version of Aquaman comes to us from the Tales of the Dark Multiverse reimagining of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Here Aquaman is the result of his father's mad science experiments. His father made it so that his son would be able to breathe underwater. Born a human but turned merman, Aquaman in this reality always felt like an outcast. Not only is his origins more dark and horrific, but this is also a version of Aquaman that you would certainly not want to come up against. While fighting against Searcher with his fellow members of the Justice Society of Earth, he unleashed 3 massive megalodons on the villain. Yikes. Ooh, I guess megalodons are real on that planet. Are megalodons real on our planet? That's the real question. Number 8. Skeleton Barry Allen. This version of Barry Allen, who appears in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Dark Knight's Metal, ends up becoming reduced to a skeleton that is animated by the Speed Force. True story. He is like a monstrous version of his former self, but at least he is still a hero. This skeleton version of what remains of Barry Allen is the one who stops Bat family member Duke Thomas, aka Signal, in order to get Duke to confront those he had left behind when he left to try and save the multiverse. In the end, Duke joins the remaining heroes in a final stand, and Barry gives his life to help him in his attempt. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, just a quick reminder to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it, and if you want me to talk more about the Dark Multiverse, which I'd love to talk about. I know it's not really here anymore, but I still love it. Number 7. Hecate. In the retelling of the War of Gods from the Tales of the Dark Multiverse series, we see a reality where Hecate won the day and ended up permanently taking hold of Diana. Unable to see the light and find hope again, Diana became a prisoner within her own body. Hecate was ruthless and used Diana's physical form and power in addition to her own magics to attack and destroy many of Diana's friends and superhero colleagues. In the end, only an organized attack of Earth's magic users and heroes could restrain her. Zatanna, as such, managed to have her imprisoned and held until she could hopefully find a way to free Wonder Woman from Hecate's possession. Hecate is even more powerful here than I personally would have even guessed, but magic can work like that sometimes, I suppose. I love that scene where she's just like taking out heroes like left and right, and I was like, but wouldn't they? But shouldn't they be able to? Alright then. Number 6. Robin King. Robin King might seem like just a homicidal child, but at the end of the day, he is still Bruce Wayne, and still a version of Batman, meaning that while he might just seem like a traumatized child, he was really a completely capable and calculated villain who was able to take on and defeat capable heroes like Barry Allen's Flash and the Swamp Thing with relative ease, often using the fact that people underestimated him to his advantage. At one point, Robin King even manages to use the anti-life equation, repurposing it to turn people into the anti-living, basically turning them into violent zombies, like the infected or corrupted that we see in Deceased. Basically, don't underestimate the Robin King. Number 5. Gaia. One of my personal all-time favorite villains that we've seen emerge from the Dark Multiverse is Gaia. Gaia is the ultimate supervillain evolution of Terra, who is the main villain of the Tales of the Dark Multiverse retelling of the Judas Contract. Here, Terra becomes inspired by Robin to take charge of her own life, but in a much darker way. His speech inspires her to reach deep within herself and unlock the true potential of her power, turning her into an insanely capable villain who turns on Deathstroke, killing him, and then attacks the Teen Titans on her own, also destroying them. When some of the most powerful heroes in DC respond, such as Superman, she also makes quick work of them, proving just how dangerous Terra could be if she had the right inspiration and motivation. I love that she's just like, now the world's mine, and it's like, okay then. Number 4. Darkseid, Avatar of Necron. Black Lantern Darkseid has to be up there for me in terms of some of the most frightening villains of the Dark Multiverse has given us. This version of Darkseid appeared in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Blackest Night. Here, Darkseid was also infected by the Black Lanterns and ended up becoming the new Avatar of Death incarnate himself, Lord Necron. Of course, he would ultimately end up being defeated to make way for an even more terrifying reality in the end, after an attempt to save the universe went wrong. But still, before that all happened, the Black Lanterns were pretty successful here, and Darkseid would have likely been the most powerful among them. Fortunately, the Loboverse beat them out. Number 3. The Broken. The Broken is one of the scariest versions of Batman around, in my humble opinion. While many others might not put him at the top of their list, for me, he has to have one of the be-all, end-all of chilling origin stories. The Broken version of Batman, who later goes on to become one of the Dark Knights, first appeared in Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Batman Nightfall. Here we learn that in this much darker alternate reality, after having his back broken, Batman also had Azrael taking over the mantle of Batman, but when he returned, he was unable to take back the cape and cowl from him, instead being defeated by Jean-Paul Valley. Valley would go on to become Saint Batman, and Bruce Wayne would be kept alive as like a head and a torso, connected to a bunch of machinery and tubes. Bruce suffers unbearably painful seizures while kept in this form, and is eventually healed and rescued by the son of Bane and his mother, Lady Shiva. However, Bruce ends up revealing himself to be even worse than Saint Batman when it comes to his dark vision for Gotham. What a twist. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. Although he may have transcended and be defeated now, Batman Who Laughs remains one of the most terrifying characters to come out of the Dark Multiverse, a version of Bruce Wayne who ended up being turned insane by exposure to the Joker venom. This version of Bruce killed all of his fellow Bat family members except for Damian, who he instead recruited to join him. Yay. Batman Who Laughs would serve Barbados, the Bat God, and go on to assemble an army of Dark Knights from across the Dark Multiverse to join him in reshaping and conquering all of reality, becoming one of the most feared villains in all of DC's history, not just even within the Dark Multiverse.